Welcome back, guys, to another episode On Air With Dro, on the second episode of the Zoom/YouTube series. Today, I have George Richards, who covers the Florida Panthers from the Athletics. Say hello to everybody, George.
What's up, everybody? What's going on?
I just want to thank you again for coming on to the show. I appreciate it. I know, you've been busy, obviously, with the season, but now that we're in quarantine, I just want to let you know how you've been doing with everything.
Everything's been good. Just hanging out at the house, taking a field trip a week to Publix. That's been about it. So just trying to hang out at the house. Nothing exciting, that's for sure.
That's good to hear. I mean, good thing, you're doing everything, you're doing great. And, obviously, we don't know it's all up to date, right? Day to day. So we got to take it.
We'll see.
So obviously the first questions that I kind of want to get down to, obviously we don't have any hockey. So it feels weird that, we've been through this drought. Almost feels like a lockout season. So kind of want to take your perspective. There's been a thought, that the NHL is looking to pursue a 24-team playoff to finish out the season. Kind of your thoughts of what you think is going to be happening, within the next few weeks or maybe months.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you just hear what's reported elsewhere, and that 24-team playoff seems to be something that's gaining traction, I guess, through, with the NHL and the NHLPA. I think it's going to be tough. I mean, it's been 2 months now,
right.
Going on 3 since we played. March 12th was the day everything was shut down. So the last games were March 11th. There are a lot of teams out there that haven't played, and really they were running out the clock as it was. I mean,
right.
Some of those teams at the bottom of the league, they've been looking toward the draft since, Thanksgiving. So to bring those teams back, I think is going to be a real challenge, just to play some meaningless games that were, just killing the season anyway. So I think that you only bring back a certain segment of the league. I'm sure that's why they're looking at that, is so
right.
you don't have all these wasted games and stuff. So we'll see how it goes. And safety's paramount, and that's something they have to work through, and then money, of course. But it sounds like we're going to have something.
Right, and the interesting thing about that is, I think that the NHL is trying to do like a 3-week, a month kind of like training camp. According to I think the Keith Yandel, I saw like a video on NHL Network where they were like kind of interviewing him and saying that might be a possibility. And obviously they want to finish out the season, so 3 weeks to a month, he was kind of not on board on that. He thinks it's kind of too long with that. So
yeah, but you got to do something. I mean, this is
right.
I mean, these guys haven't skated. At all. I mean, at least when you're going into a regular season, these guys it may have been off, but they've
right.
had access to ice. They've been able to go to the complex and work out for a month leading into training camp. And then, you only need 2 weeks of a training camp. Remember, in a normal training camp, you're playing, maybe you start on Thursday and you're playing an exhibition game on Saturday
right.
2 days later. That's because guys have been skating already. They've been skating since July. I remember Roberto Luongo was always on the ice at the end of July and skated all through August.
Right.
You don't have that right now. So unless something changes in the next couple of days, and guys are going to be able to get out there and start skating, they haven't been on the ice. So you're going to need something to get this thing going.
Yeah, it's very weird and eerie. I mean, it just doesn't feel right to just not have any sports on the table. So kind of what I wanted to go over was, this, about a month or two ago, Vinny Viola, Bobrovsky, and some of the players donated like relief for the staff members that were not going to get paid. I thought that was a very good, part on the organization. Obviously, after the previous years, of like Tom Rowe, Gerard Gallant, how they've been out of the organization type thing. What are your thoughts of just like the organization and Vinny Viola, what he's really done with this Florida Panther team, since he's been the owner?
Well, they're trying to change things here. I mean, when they took over the organization in 2013, I think it was, this place was, it had been, kind of run down, and they didn't have the best reputation around the league,
right.
As a place to play. And they've tried to change the culture, and they've tried to change the little things. they let teams stay an extra night when they're out of town, and they're not flying across the country at all hours of the morning to save some money.
Of
So
course.
there's little things. I mean, the guys appreciate that. This has been a team that's been, right up, higher, toward the salary cap. They've invested money here and there, and you know, they're trying. I mean, they've invested in the front office. They brought in a lot of people, and they're trying to make this thing work here.
Yeah, and I think it shows Bobrovsky's character as well. Obviously not having the best seasons of of what he's normally been through, obviously like with Vezina trophies and etc. But just to give a little money, for the staff and helping out, it just shows like a good character, that he is, and everything is just doesn't mean about like stats and everything, right? Like everyone is
Oh yeah, yeah,
human, of course. So I think that was
yeah.
a
That has nothing to do with hockey. I mean,
right,
that's people, doing the right thing. I mean,
right,
because when this thing's, when it first started, I guess it was March 11th. You heard Mark Cuban come out and
right.
say, we're going to help. Everybody's talking about the games being canceled. Mark Cuban's like, but we've got people who work at this arena who are
Yeah,
really going to be hurting. And then Love in Cleveland came out and said he was going to help pay the Cleveland Cavalier workers, and then the Panthers did theirs as well. So the Panthers were one of the first teams to jump on that publicly.
right.
Um, and they probably wouldn't have made it public unless we had heard about it somewhere else. But yeah, definitely a good
Yeah.
gesture, and I'm sure the people who work at the arena and work for the team are pretty happy that at least financially it was one less thing to worry about during this.
Of course. And then obviously, you just never know with this pandemic of, we're already like on the second month. So we're still day to day, like we were mentioning before. Kind of Panther news again. What I wanted to go over, just been recently, probably you've talked to Dale Talon about this, about, Henrik Borgstrom. There's a rumors that he might be possibly, looking at the KHL. Any thoughts of what Dale Talon has told you, to see any update of what's really going on with that?
He just told me that that Dale said he spoke to Henrik Borgstrom's agent, and that Henrik he wants to play here, play in the NHL, play for the Florida Panthers. I haven't been able to speak to Henrik about this. He's back in Finland.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear that, I mean, there's probably, I would think there's truth to that. I mean, the writer who wrote it in Finland, a very well respected writer. I mean, why wouldn't he think about staying? I mean, he's a restricted free agent with the Panthers, so that means he doesn't have a contract for next season. But this season's not over yet, so
Right.
nothing has happened.
Yeah.
If the Panthers want him back, because they're going to expand rosters. If Henrik Borgstrom is healthy and then they want him back, that's a negotiation they're going to have to make, getting him back from Finland. But even if he plays next year in the KHL, the Panthers still own his rights.
Yeah.
I from what I know of Henrik Borgstrom, he wants to be an NHL player. He wants to play in the NHL. But with all this stuff going on, like I've said on Twitter, if he wants to stay at home, who can blame him? I mean,
Of course.
If he wants to stay in Helsinki for a year and just stay at home, okay,
Be all him. Yeah. Right. No, it's his choice, of course.
World. Yeah.
No, of course. I mean, I think it just shows Henrik Borgstrom a little bit. I think the agent is kind of, seeing other options, of course. I mean, I think Henrik Borgstrom had his opportunity in the first few months of the season, and obviously he didn't get the stats that we wanted, of course. But he, I think with Bob Bubner and then now Joel Quenneville, he's kind of had to adjust to a different style of play. I think in Bubner's, he was more of like a body checker, which was not his forte. But now with Joel Quenneville, he's kind of had more of the charisma of like his nice and finesse plays where he can make those passes because he's a really good passer. But I think when he got down to the AHL, he was playing between bottom six, top six, obviously because of injuries. So, Henrik Borgstrom has kind of been up and down. It's not really his fault. Obviously he had a good career at the University of Denver, but, we're all Panther fans are just hoping that, over the years, development hasn't been really good, in the AHL for us. I mean, I think you've mentioned it on your Twitter before, where Vincent Trocheck was like the last one that, I mean, Panther fans were really happy about. So do you feel like there's a trend where, you know, obviously the development is kind of shaky with the Panthers, or is just, what do you feel like?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think you look at Henrik Borgstrom, and I think, you know, maybe the game came too easy to him. I mean,
Right.
he was obviously a standout at the University of Denver on the college level, played 2 seasons at Denver, and then came to the Panthers. And last season, you know, was his first pro season. I mean, he's only
Yeah.
been a pro 2 years. He's 20-something years old. And people already want to call him a bust, or they want to say that the Florida Panthers have ruined his career. He's a
Yeah,
kid. He's just now getting started.
of course.
Yeah, maybe they rushed. I mean, they gave him the opportunity to be the third center of this team, and at the end of the day, Coach Quinville, Joel Quinville, was like, "We need something else here," and they brought in Brian Boyle. They wanted a veteran guy to do that, and they said, "You know
Right.
what? Maybe we rushed Henrik Borgstrom. Let's send him to the minors and let him get a taste." You know, and he didn't like that. I mean, Henrik
Right.
Borgstrom thought his minor league days were done. Again, he's a young kid. I mean, he's got plenty of time to get better and get stronger
Right.
and learn the game. So ask me this in a year or two, but right now, you know, Henrik Borgstrom's book has not been closed, and
Of course.
hasn't been written. You know.
Yeah, of course. Super young, like you mentioned, 20 years old. That's, you
Yeah.
know, most of the NHL players that come out like at 16, 17. I know a lot of Panther fans on Twitter, obviously, you know, they've over the years, it's just been so, there's been so many players like Quinn Howden, Drew Shore. Uh, I mean, the list can go on where, you know, they just haven't
Yeah,
developed.
and where are those players now?
Yeah, you don't even know where they are. Exactly. So good point there, George. So the next,
These are not top 10 draft picks. I
right,
mean, these are guys that you're getting. You know, I mean, other teams have had success in developing players,
right.
and other teams have not. I mean,
It's
it's
a
just one of
standpoint.
those things. But look at Florida's defense. I mean, it looks like, just off the top of my head, was it Keith Yandel and Stroman? Everybody else is homegrown on the
Yeah,
Panthers, and only Aaron Ekblad was a top pick. I mean,
yeah.
he's the number 1 overall pick, but you know,
Fair
Josh
point.
Brown came through the system, Mackenzie Weegar came through the system, Riley Stillman has come through the system. So you know, and goaltending too, they've been able to get some good guys through that. I mean, you know, not starters or anything. So
Right.
I'm just saying. I know everybody's upset about Borgstrom, but again, it's not the end of the world. If he does stay it doesn't mean that he's lost. It doesn't mean that he's a bust.
Right.
There's still
It's
a
potential to grow.
lot of career left in Henry Borgstrom.
Oh, I agree, hands down. I mean, he's got the size and everything. He's got the tools. You know, let's not get a little carried away, Panther fans, of course. You know. So the next question that I want to ask you is, obviously, like you were mentioning before, you know, there's going to be some offseason moves, and you know, some of the offseason moves we're thinking of is Mike Hoffman is a unrestricted free agent. You have also Dadonov being unrestricted free agent. Obviously, you can't keep them both. There's probably, I'm thinking they're probably going to get, you know, at least one of them. But if they have the possibility of keeping both, you know, who would they keep more of? Would they, you think Hoffman? Obviously, you know, he's had the goal scoring this year. I mean, he's light a torch since he's been acquired, you know, from San Jose and Ottawa. But do you think Dadonov would be, you know, making a push to at least, you know, keep him? I know he's 29 or I think 30 years old now. So similar to Hoffman. What do you think about those two players?
I think it's going to be. I think when the season started, and even at the trade deadline, I think the thought always was of those two free agents, it would probably be Dadonov, just because he has a history here, and Hoffman, you thought maybe was going to be out of their price range, and now I don't know. I really, because of this pandemic, I really don't know. We don't know what the free agency market is going to be. It was Mike Hoffman was supposed to be getting a big contract July 1. Really? I don't know.
Yes.
We don't know what the market's going to be.
Right.
So we don't know I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, honestly, we are in a different time right now. So I honestly don't know. I can't. I'm not even going to guess because we
No,
don't know.
of
We don't
course.
know.
You're totally right. Obviously, every Panther fan, they want to know, obviously, as of now, but there's no sport, so you can't really comment on something where
We don't
you
know
don't
when the
even know if
free
they're going to
agent. We
finish.
don't know when the market's even going to be. It's not going to be
Right.
July 1. It might be November 1 or
Of
something.
course. No.
And we're looking at a salary cap that may stay flat. It may go down a little bit.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of teams out there that don't have any money at all and are going to be shedding players. So it's just one of those questions you can't answer. I mean,
Right.
Mike Hoffman, if you want to talk about the players,
right.
Mike Hoffman did a heck of a job and played like a guy who wanted to stay here. We thought they'd get the free, at the trade deadline,
Right.
he might be one of those guys to go. And the way he played in February, he was the only player producing in the month of February for the Panthers, and was playing, both sides of the ice. He was doing everything you could ask a guy to do, and the Panthers kept him.
Right.
So we'll have to see. We're just going to have to see. I mean, it's all conjecture. We just don't know right now.
Right. No, hopefully the Panthers can keep both of them, but obviously it's a business, and at least you would be able to keep one. Obviously, a lot of Panther fans, refer to the year,
unless it's a bargain, I don't expect you getting to keep both of them, and I never did. We always were saying you're going to lose one of them.
Exactly.
But which one isn't? And it could be both. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to be.
Right. And we don't want to have the same situation that we did with Riley Smith and Marchessault. Obviously those were two other different people, but, obviously Panther fans do remember those, key players that we had, but that's another story. Right. So, so the next question that I had was, obviously, we're in off season. We're not in off season, but 13 games before the off season. These are more of like the off season questions where they're all up for grabs because of the situation, like you were mentioning. Obviously, Mike Matheson has been, a player that's been coming up, for the Panthers. Media, fans, and around the league just not playing the potential that he, we would have wanted. There is rumors that he's probably the Panther player that's most likely to get traded this offseason. Do you believe that by any chance?
Again, I don't know. I mean, I think Mike Matheson, they really like his skill level. I mean, he's one of the best skaters, if not the best skater on the team.
Right.
He's a guy that's got a long contract. It's going to be tough to move without bringing something else on. And I don't know if they want. I mean, I feel like the last couple of weeks he's played pretty good. I think he's had moments this season where maybe he regressed a little bit. Last year was really tough on Mike Matheson. I think that we all know that. The mistakes that he made were glaring. And I think the game just got into his head. And I think this year there were times when we've seen him put some of that behind him and really look good. And the last couple games that we've seen the Panthers play, Mike Matheson was given some great responsibility and stepped up to the plate. So I think this is going to be one where Joel Quenneville steps in and says yay or nay.
Right. And,
we'll just have to wait and see. Again, we don't know what's going to happen this offseason. We really don't.
Right. No, I agree. And I think how the NHL puts it is, I think, like, you have to give – to really find a defenseman, I think it's like the 300, 400 game mark. So, obviously Matheson, he's been in, for a few years, and you see the potential where, like you mentioned, he has great skating ability where he can just drive to the net, make plays. We've seen him on 3-on-3 overtimes, against Pittsburgh, getting that game-winning goal. I mean, he just has it. It's just like, it feels so like I feel bad for him whenever he does make the mistake, is because he just has so much potential where, he can do it, but it's just not working out. It's different a little bit than Eric Branson, because Eric Branson, he was more defensive, defenseman.
Yeah, they're different players.
Right. So, because I know a lot of Panther fans love Branson, right? But I think Matheson should deserve a little bit more love, only because I think he's getting criticized more, only because I think the general defensive corps is not really physical. We don't have a physical presence where, like, we had in over the years with, Branson, Willie Mitchell, Mike Weaver, people who just don't want you in front of the net, and I think, how you were mentioning, I think the last 2 weeks of the season before, the stoppage, I think Matheson was kind of one of those players where, hey, look, you're in front of my net, I'm going to chop you or whatever, just to get out of, Bobrovsky. So has Uyghur, which kind of, and Brown. So I think the reason, most of the time the defensive corps is kind of getting criticized is because they're not physical enough. What do you think about that? You think?
Well, I mean, they changed their style. I mean,
Right.
they went, in 2016 they went more offensive. I mean, you've got defensive, offensive. It's just the
A
style of
mix.
play.
Right.
I mean, Ekblad is more offensive. Yandel is more offensive. Matheson is more
Yeah.
offensive.
There's like four, even Uyghur in
I
reality.
mean, so yeah, and even Uyghur has a real nice offensive touch. So
It's up there.
they're working through it. They're
Right.
working through it.
Right. Um, so down to the couple last questions. Obviously, we're not finished with the 2019 season, but for the situation that they're in, do you consider the 2019 season for the Panthers to be a disappointment?
It's an incomplete, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at February, yeah,
Right.
it was definitely a disappointment because I think you look at a team when they had as many home games as the Panthers did in February and didn't win a single one of them. Good teams don't do that, and it was just one of those odd situations where you just couldn't figure it out. They just looked lost for much of that month, and yet here we are. I mean, after they win in St. Louis, they were 1 point out of the playoffs, 1 point out of the wild card, 1 point back of Toronto. And then the next night, Toronto won it, beat Tampa Bay. So now it's 3 points with 13 games left. That's a lot of hockey. There wasn't 3 games left and you're 6 points out, there's a lot of, they were right in it. So to judge this season as anything but, if it stopped right now, if the season was over,
then
I think you still have to say incomplete because they
weren't able to finish the 13. No, I agree. I think
they weren't 10 points out with 13 games to go, and then you can go, they probably would not have made it.
Right. It's just like for
points out with games against everybody you're playing, and
you just never know because obviously from previous years.
And then once you get there, we all know
you got to do what you got to do. Because for previous years, we've seen a lot of Panthers, miss it by a point or, maybe less or just that stretch. So, Panther fans have seen the roller coaster over the years, and to be so close in the past few years compared to, in the early 2000s where you were not even seeing anything. It's just a little frustrating and to know that you do have the players this time where, the young core and you're hoping to build off and continue it. But it's just like, when you're so close and not get over the hump, what do you do? So, and
but the hump, there was no hump to get over.
Right. So that's where most of the people are like, Dale Talon, what are you doing? But I think Dale Talon, gets criticized a lot. I think it was a similar situation like Pat Riley, where he's had a couple of years where they didn't make the playoffs. Obviously, when you build a Stanley Cup, team like what he did with the Blackhawks, and then you got Pat Riley who does it with the Heat, you're obligated to from fans to look in one way. You're like championship or nothing, right? So I think most of the fans they've seen the resume of Dale Talon, they know what he's capable of doing. Why hasn't he done it now? Obviously it's a business, it's a different whole side of team. I think when he came in, the Florida Panthers, I mean, the young core, nothing was really down here compared to what it was in Chicago. So I think I believe in Dale Talon no matter what people say. It's just one of those things where it's you just got to continue it. You just got to see progression. If you see regression, it's a different story. So kind of
see where it goes.
Yeah, of course. Kind of the last question that I wanted to mention is kind of more of a fan popular question, which you probably have seen over Twitter, is third jersey possibilities. Obviously, there's been a lot of people who would love to see a third jersey. I think I would be a big fan, kind of, see, I remember the blueprint jerseys, those are our fan favorite. Do you believe, any kind of third jersey would be a possibility for the Panthers?
Yeah, they'll get one eventually. I mean, most teams do, right? I mean, everything I've heard from the team though is they changed their look 4 years ago in 2016, and that's why they haven't released one. I've heard one person tell me, "Oh yeah, we've got one ready to go." I've heard other people say, "No, we've got like 6 different ones that we've drawn up." So
Right. You just never
when I
know.
know, you'll know.
Yeah, exactly. I know, back in the day when Roberto Luongo first came from Vancouver, you were kind of the ones who showed out the gold mask that he's had, and then he's had great creations. I mean, hopefully so, right? Hopefully the Panthers can get another, jersey. It would look nice. I think, a lot of fans are thinking it's a little stale with these two new jerseys because we're, made for the old throwbacks that they like a little bit more. So we'll see how
We'll
that
see how
goes,
it goes. We'll see how it
right?
goes.
So I want to thank you again, George, for coming on. I appreciate your, all the information that you've provided. Obviously, stay safe, with this, coronavirus going out there. And hopefully we'll see some hockey soon.
Let's hope. Good talking to you. Stay safe. Stay home. We'll see you later.
We'll do, George. Take care. Be